Here we go. Hello and welcome. I'm Anna Klint, and this is the Born to Flourish channel. And today I am so thrilled and excited to be talking with Susun Weed. She is a green witch, an herbalist, a teacher, and author of 6 amazing books aimed at bringing herbalism back to its rightful place as people's medicine. And she's also an activist. And I'm just so thrilled to have her with us today. Thanks for joining us, Susun.
Anna, your work is so vital and so precious to us. You know, I imagine that we're reweaving the healing cloak of the ancients.
And
you are putting in such strong threads and opening it up for so many other threads to come in. I so honor all that you're doing. Thank you, Anna.
Oh my gosh. Well, it is such an honor to be able to weave this tapestry with you here today because you have done so much amazing work. And today, what we're really diving into is a conversation around somewhat semantics and really coming into a dialogue around what it means to be female or feminine in this time, the age of Aquarius. And how this came about was you were part of Rising from the Ashes, which was this beautiful summit that I created earlier this year in 2021. And I sent out an email with a header, "The future is feminine," referring to the divine feminine. And you wrote back right away and you said, "The future is female." And we got into it over email and we had a beautiful little exchange. And I said, oh my gosh, like, let's make a video and actually just hash this out because these are really important differences and nuances. And you're an activist for what it means to be female and women's rights in the world. And I thought, well, this is really good stuff to talk about. So when you saw that heading on that email that said the future is feminine, take it away. What happened in your thought process, in your heart?
That feminine is a trigger word for me.
I figured.
And I wish that it was something other than feminist. But womanist is really clunky. So
I agree, but it's where we want to be.
But it is really much more where we want to be because the real difference here is that feminine is a cultural concept.
Yeah.
So the truth of the matter is I'm not especially feminine. I didn't grow up to be a dainty little thing, right? I'm a big, strong, strapping woman who runs a chainsaw and likes to go solo winter camping. You know, these are not feminine traits.
Right.
And so it's been important for me to define what I do as what a woman does. It doesn't matter whether it's wearing lace and ruffles and pink.
Yeah, totally.
It is still a woman doing it.
Right.
And I think that's important. But what's really threatening right now is a beyond semantic discussion that is sweeping the world, in which there is a belief that because feminine and masculine are cultural concepts, sexual dimorphism is also a cultural concept. So that what it is to be a woman is a cultural concept, and what it is to be a man is a cultural concept by those lights. But what it is to be female and what it is to be male is not a cultural concept.
Right.
It's a physical reality. I have been involved with people who were unhappy in the bodies they were born in since the early 1980s, with an MD from Manhattan approached me after I taught at the Open Center and said, "Susun, could you help me? And could you help people who are transitioning with herbs that will help make their transition easier? Are the hormonal herbs what we want? How do we want to do this?" So it's an issue that I've actually been involved with for 40 years, for a really, really long time. And what's been going on in the past 10 years really does not please me at all.
Yeah, can we talk about that? Because that was one of my questions that I had for you when you said, no, it's female. And I didn't know if you meant female is only female, if you were born a female and that's it, or people who transition, shouldn't be called female, because this is becoming such a huge cultural phenomenon. And so I really wanted to understand better what your perspective was and where you were coming from. And I love, understanding a little bit more about your history about being asked to use herbs in that way. So can you clarify more about that?
Well, old school, if someone said, I'm unhappy in the body I was born in, I would like to be the other gender, there was actually a protocol. And the protocol was, and I may not have the absolute specifics of it, so pardon me if I left out a part or made something seem bigger than it was, that there was a gradual thing that was done. First, the person cross-dressed and was publicly seen as the other gender, as a kind of trial run. I worked with a person in the local community who got through this trial run and, still said, yes, this is really what I want to do, and started taking hormones, because again, that was part of the protocol, was you take hormones before any surgical intervention of any kind.
Right.
And couldn't tolerate the hormones. And after 2 years of being referred to by their preferred gender, had to go back to their born gender.
Wow.
Because by this step-by-step process, it became clear how much damage was going to go on. And this is what's so disturbing about what's happening now, that teenagers in many states from the age of 13 on can go to a doctor, request surgery and hormones without their parents' permission.
Wow, without their parents' permission?
Without their parents' permission?
Oh my goodness, wow. And what's so troubling about that is that we know that the teenage mind does not have a grasp of consequences. It's absolutely impossible for a teenager, because of the development of their brain is not fully there yet. It's not online. They cannot make adult consent type decisions until they've reached a certain maturity. And so to understand that a 13-year-old, that's actually quite shocking. And I feel deeply, I have a lot of empathy for people who feel out of place in their bodies. And to some degree, I've, been on if there's a spectrum, I'm on that spectrum. But to know that you don't have the capacity to make a decision that is the hugest decision you'll probably ever make in your life. And you can do that without any kind of, that's really shocking. I'm kind of dumbfounded by that.
Well, there's really basically two choices. If you feel that you're in the wrong body, you can change your body, or you can change your relationship to being in the wrong body.
And I'm sure that people who feel like they're in the wrong body are going to say, no, 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 no.
This is what indigenous cultures did.
Yeah.
Most indigenous cultures accepted people who said, I'm in the wrong body. I'm the other sex.
Yeah.
But they didn't give them hormones, drugs, or surgery. They said, good, you stay in that body and we'll treat you like the other being.
Right. Right.
And so rather than making your body accommodate your mind, you ask your mind to accommodate your body. It is really the two sides of the same coin. We are not saying pretend it's not happening. We're saying absolutely be that. Be that without harming yourself. Because what's the statement about medicine that everybody in the world agrees to? First, do no harm.
Do no harm, right. And so it's really helpful to remember. I can just hear alarm bells right now, there's going to be a whole lot of people that don't like what you're saying. But we want to remember that you are coming from the wise woman tradition, which is antithetical to the Western medical model. And it's this Western medical model that is saying, yes, cut, inject, change, alter, mold, shape, do all of this stuff from in this very, and we can use now the dichotomy of masculine, feminine. That's the masculine model. That is we will tear it down and rebuild it up. Like that's
this is masculine as we conceive of it.
Yes. Yeah.
And maybe it's male.
Right. And maybe it's male. Exactly. But it is
we
inherently
don't
male.
know. What we know about male and female is that females have XX in every cell.
Yeah.
Just to lay some basics down. Everybody knows this, but let's just go over it. An egg only has half of the genetic material. A sperm only has half of the genetic material. Sperm is not semen. Semen is Latin for seed. And for thousands of years, it was thought that the male seed had the whole baby and it was planted in the womb. And the woman had absolutely nothing to do with the conception. Well, we know better than that now. Yes. We know it's halves, and those halves meet at conception, and the female half and the male half join together. Now, every cell in every woman's body is XX. So her egg is an X.
Yeah.
There's no choice. It's all of her eggs are X.
Right.
But every cell in a man's body is XY. So half of his sperm are X and half of his sperm are Y.
Right.
If his X sperm joins with her X egg, we get a female who has XX in every cell of her body. If his Y sperm joins with an X egg, we have a male who has XY in every cell of his body. Now, people will say, well, that's not always true. It's true that it's not always true, but it's rarer than being struck by lightning.
Oh, yeah, to have both. Right. Yeah.
To have something different than that. Yes, it does happen. My own brother is a triple X male.
Oh, wow.
So he somehow, his gamete, his conception was 2 sperm and 2 eggs. So he got 3 X's and a Y.
Huh. Wow.
And there are triple X males. They're kind of a genotype. They're big. They're real friendly. Everybody likes them. They have no sex drive at all.
Huh. Wow.
Right, but they're just like the kindest people.
Yeah, teddy bears.
Yeah, they're right. They're the real teddy bear men, exactly. And women feel safe in their company because they don't have any sex drive.
Yeah, interesting.
Right, but he says to me that he's never felt like anything other than a male.
Yeah,
even though he, like myself, is at the far edge of that bell curve.
Right. Well, and so much of that has to do with how people perceive us and then treat us, right? So if someone perceives him as a male, they'll treat him as a male. And so he moves through the world as a male in that, relationship and in those unconscious interactions with people. And yeah, right.
Yeah. Even with long hair, I get sirred a lot.
Oh, I get sirred a lot too. Because I'm always in the tool department at Home Depot.
Right, because we are using our energy in a way that this culture thinks of as masculine.
Right. That's right. Absolutely.
We're not rising at the end of our sentences. We're not giggling. We're not saying, I just came by for a screw. It's like, I want a double, screw. Yeah.
Totally.
6 of them.
Totally.
Right, totally. So while I am perfectly happy to accept any being in any form they choose to present themselves to me, I want to be very clear that if you have XX in every cell in your body and you show up at the emergency room as a male, you won't get enough drugs and you could die. Or you will get too much drugs and you will die. Right. Because the amount of drugs that we give to XX bearers and XY bearers is different.
I never thought about that. Yeah.
XY livers process drugs differently.
Right.
In fact, there's whole classes of painkillers that are just now coming on the market because they were tested in men and they did nothing in men, but they're incredibly effective for women.
Yeah. We don't even need to go down that whole pathway of like how all the studies are tested on men, even drugs for women.
Right.
What the
But
hell?
what we need to know, and what I think is important, is that there are medical differences between XX and XY,
Yeah.
not cultural differences, not thought differences,
Yeah.
not, oh, you can be anything you want to be, but no. When your life is on the line, we have to know, are you male or are you female? Not are you masculine or feminine?
Sure. Sure.
Right? Not what you believe, not how you act, not how you want to dress,
Mm-hmm.
but what's going on in the cellular basis in your body. And so that's what I say.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who has XX in every cell can come to a moon lodge.
Mm-hmm.
A moon lodge is for double X's.
Mm-hmm. And so that means that you restrict access to people who have transitioned.
It means if you have double X, you can come. It's simple as that.
Yeah. How do you and have you had
So, well, let
experience?
me put it this way. Vicky Noble said, I love Aboriginal cultures. I've read every book I possibly can on Aboriginal cultures, and I've studied them a lot, and I've traveled all over the world and met with a lot of Aboriginal elders. I'm an Aboriginal person.
Oh, right. Yeah. No.
Would you agree?
No.
Well, what if she dyed her hair and dyed her skin?
Yeah, no. Yeah.
No?
Right.
So even if she changed her appearance, she's still not an Aboriginal person just because she thinks she is?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, this is so freaking complicated and messy, because if we had a trans person talking with us right now, we would have a different perspective. We would be being called out or called in.
I would love if we had a different perspective, but that's not been my experience with talking with trans people right now.
Right.
In the past, yes. I went to the bar mitzvah of, so far as we know, the only person who's had both a bar mitzvah and a bas mitzvah. Right. And was very happy to support her as a transition person. And she's taught at the Wise Women's Center. I truly have no problem with individuals. What I have a problem with is militant behavior.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
At the last herbal conference that I went to in 2019, two things. One, we were given a name badge, and on the bottom of the name badge, it said, my preferred pronoun is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't need to use a pronoun to talk to you, do I?
No, you need to use my name.
If I'm in the presence of someone, I don't need a pronoun. So we only need pronouns when we're talking about people behind their backs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So maybe we should just eliminate pronouns and not talk about people when they're not present.
Totally all for it.
That same weekend, Alabama had just passed a law making it punishable by death to have an abortion.
Ugh.
And so I said to every woman that I contacted, I said, if you're in favor of what's going on in Alabama, write your pronoun on the line. If you're not, tear it off. More than half the people at that conference tore it off.
Yeah.
So that they could make a statement about women's rights.
Yeah.
So I found that pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I decided to go to a workshop about wild berries and fruits of North America, given by an Indigenous elder. Sounds perfect to me. Mm-hmm. I get there late. Story of my life, Anna. People ask me questions. I choose to stop and answer them, so I wind up being late. It's certainly my choice. I'm not the victim of it, but okay. Yeah. I come in late as usual. And there's a small group gathered there, and it doesn't look to me like they're talking about fruit or berries. Nor do I see anybody that looks like an elder. Or Indigenous, although I'm going to reserve that. I mean, I could be wrong. Mm-hmm. So I come in and I sit down, and all conversation immediately ceases. And one of the people turns to me and says, what are you here for? And I said, I'm here for wild berries and fruits of North America. And they said, that workshop's been canceled. I said, what are you doing? They said, we're doing herbs for trans people. I said, great. I've been doing that for decades. This is going to be really interesting. And they said, are you trans? I said, no. They said, get out of here.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I said, oh, acceptance? Is that a word in your vocabulary?
Yeah. Well, that goes way beyond the trans community. That's everything right now. Like people are so exclusive minded in so many ways. Like we're becoming, I don't even want to get into the current things that are going
So
on in the
so
world.
if they're
But
asking me
yes,
for if they're asking me for acceptance,
right.
guess what I need?
Acceptance.
I
Yeah.
need acceptance too.
Yeah.
It, there is certainly no harm that could
Mhm,
come to any trans person from a non-trans person listening to them talk about herbs.
mhm, mhm. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I have close friends who, in certain situations, won't go into public because they're afraid a man might come into the bathroom.
Right.
A man who thinks he's a woman.
Oh, that's what you mean. Okay. I thought it was the general fear that so many women have that they're going to be accosted by
No,
men.
this is a specific fear that men now feel like they can go into women's bathrooms if they say, I feel like a woman.
Hmm. Hmm.
And this is actually being upheld sometimes in
It
courts.
is. That's right. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Well, I actually really feel like we probably should have this conversation with more people on the panel. It would be really interesting. If,
It is, well, it's between you and I are talking about female and feminine.
that's right. And
And
so,
we're not telling anybody what to do or what to
no,
think or what to believe.
no,
I'm making what I think is an important distinction for us all to remember, and that is that feminine is what you want it to be.
right, right. Yeah.
Right? I was just reading something written by an Ojibwe, and he was talking about the origin of the name of the sugar maple tree
Mm,
in Anishinaabe,
hmm.
and it translates to English as the provider tree or
Oh,
the man tree. And he talked about how in his culture the man is the provider,
hmm.
and that's the man's self-worth, is that he provides for the community and he provides for the family. And he says he didn't have a role model of man as provider,
Mm, hmm.
and so his cultural heritage was broken right there, and that
Right.
he doesn't understand for himself the real truth of being a man in his culture. Now that's not masculine.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
That's something much more deep and much more spiritual.
Hmm.
And when you start taking hormones at 13 that block your development
Hmm.
and block your expression of hormones, you're not getting that.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
I am pointing out specific things
Yeah.
that are problematic,
Yeah.
which is allowing teenagers to block their growth with hormones. This will have repercussions for their entire life.
Hmm.
That we are allowing teens to change their bodies surgically.
Hmm.
I am in general pretty non-judgmental, but a woman told me that she got a double mastectomy for her 14-year-old daughter's birthday present. And I looked at her and said, you are a bad mother.
Yeah.
And she
And
said to me, she would have killed herself if I hadn't gotten her the surgery. And I said, you know what?
yeah.
Those statistics are actually not true.
Oh, interesting. Hmm.
This is one of those things that's floated about.
Mm.
And I'm going to get really political here because about 10 years ago, a book came out called Four Mothers of Women's Spirituality.
Hmm.
And it gathered together essays by 30 of us who are considered the four mothers of women's spirituality. Women were left out, sections of women's experience was left out. It was not a perfect thing, but it is what it is.
Hmm.
And when the publisher came out with it, they did a bulk email to all 30 of us. And we use that as a platform to be in touch with each other and
Hmm.
to work on issues of concern to us. And this particular issue, the erosion of women's rights by the trans movement, the direct erosion of women's rights by
Hmm.
the trans movement, is of huge concern to us. We did quite a bit of research on it. And it turns out that a lot of this so called psychological studies are actually totally made up and are funded by wealthy white corporate people who have a lot to gain from this.
From
I
the,
know this sounds
yeah,
somewhat paranoid, and believe me, I do not say that there's any conspiracy here, because I
yeah.
don't believe human beings capable of conspiracy, but they're certainly capable of greed.
Mhm. Well,
And we certainly know in the drug industry that this
mhm,
is quite predominant. We're seeing a lot of it. And this is selling a huge amount of drugs. And these people are placed in situations where they can engineer the laws to make it seem like this is a human rights thing. So
mhm,
here's what I say, and this is very incendiary. I warn you beforehand. I warn all of you beforehand. Every single second on this planet, some woman dies of childbirth,
yes,
rape, or
yes,
violence.
yes.
Women's rights before trans rights. You give me equal rights for women, and I will put myself 1000% behind trans rights. You ask me for trans rights when a woman is dying every second on this planet, I'm not going to support it. It's as
Mm-hmm,
simple as that in
mm-hmm.
my universe. Again, I'm not telling anybody else what to do, but
Yeah.
I'm being clear about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I appreciate that clarity. And that's what's behind your activism of women's rights throughout the world. And you had sent me something about the UN and advocating for women's rights because our rights are being eroded, and as if we ever got them where we wanted them in the first place, and now we're still it's
And
like
now we're getting
backsliding
less
again.
and less and very much backsliding.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's the Women's
Mm-hmm.
Human Rights Campaign,
Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm.
right? WHRC. Anybody listening, please check them out. There's a weekly Zoom meeting with women from all over the world talking about what's going on, specifically how their rights as women are being taken away to give trans people rights. For instance, women worked very, very hard in Japan to have government positions set aside for women. All of those positions are currently filled by trans men.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Wow. It's very complicated, this thing.
It's not complicated. Women are women, right? Some people feel that they're in the wrong body and they want to be trans. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a woman.
So
They can call themselves anything they want, but I am not a chest feeder. I have breasts.
Yeah.
Women don't. Women give birth, not people.
Yeah.
Women go through menopause. Women menstruate, not people. I'm very clear. And I use exclusive language. I say goddess because it includes God, and woman because it includes man, and she and her because it includes he.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always including and inclusive because that's my desire, is to include us all while being very clear that I'm a woman.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, and I don't know if you're curious too, but the way my mind works, it says, what is going on at either a soul level or a cultural level or a whatever level that so many people now feel like they're in the wrong body relative to 40 years ago, 100 years ago? Is this a change in consciousness, or is this something, part of me says that there's this systemic level of dissatisfaction and unhappiness and a rampant feeling of not belonging. And if you can't even feel like you belong in your own body or belong to yourself, you can't belong anywhere. And I'm just so curious, and I wonder if you have, or if you're curious about any of that, or why is this happening now? Like, what is going on that it's become such a big
on
phenomenon?
One level, we can say that feminism completely failed to reach this generation of women with the message that you can be in a female body and be whatever you want to be. Somehow we have not gotten that message across to them. And I spent 2 hours with the daughter of a lesbian couple who had decided she was going to transition because all her friends were.
Because all her friends were doing it.
Yes, at the Women's Human Rights Forum, a American mother spoke in tears practically the whole time about her 14-year-old daughter, who was basically forced by her peer group to have her breast cut off because they were all doing it.
Mm.
And remember how devastating it is as a teenager to be different.
Yeah, it is
So
yes.
I do not think that this is a healthy spiritual thing. No, I think that this is a real repression of women. And if we want to take the big view, often when something is starting to grow strong, especially if we use Eastern philosophy, the thing that has been strong switches places with the thing that's been weak. But it does that in a very jarring way. And we have been talking for decades about how women are leading the way. We need women and women's views and women to really lead us from a desperate situation, which is getting more desperate by the minute, in fact, as the tundra melts away this summer, right? And so there's, I think, a spasm of this fear that we're not going to make it. My granddaughter and I were watching a series of videos about tipping points. And she was getting horrified. She was getting really scared.
Right.
And she said, "Grandma, what do we do?" And I said, "Well, to tell you the truth, there are two responses to this. The response that I choose is, let's see if we can make it better. Let's see if we can stop the tundra from completely dissolving. Let's see if we can cut down on greenhouse gases. Let's see if electric cars really do anything different. Let's see what the next step is." I said, but it's also a reasonable reaction to say, use it all up before it's gone.
So you're slowing down a little bit. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, you're coming back. Good. So this
Good,
is,
all right.
so I want to say one thing, and then it's a perfect segue into my next kind of thought stream. One, we could say that feminism has failed us in so many ways and has done so much disservice to my generation of women, and thinking that we can have it all if we hustle and pedal and have chips on our shoulders, that we can do it better than men and all of this stuff, we can have it all, and it's all bullshit. So anyway, that's my aside. But so you're kind of touching on and that's where womanism comes in too. And the whole feminist movement is completely, basically centered in white supremacy and all of that other stuff. So it's failed on so many levels. But then the next thing is what you're kind of touching on is what I kind of want to talk about too, which is in our spiritual community, the idea that we are entering into the divine feminine era, right? The age of Aquarius. And I understand that's a trigger word for you, but how can we parse this out? Like, it is not the divine, we are talking about the cultural idea of what femininity is, the gentleness, the holistic, the curious, all of these other things as a way of approaching everything. And, coming out of this very strong masculine period, which built up civilizations, got us through the industrial age, all of this stuff, technology, there's a lot of good that came out of it.
Allows us to talk to each other and see each other.
Exactly.
Whoa.
Exactly. But now we are, the pendulum is now swinging into this other direction. And that's really, your work, herbalism, is all about this kind of, embracing these aspects of humanity that are not about conquering, they're about embracing. And so how do we have this conversation about female, male, and then in the spiritual context of the divine feminine?
What do we call the divine feminine?
What do you call it?
We have a word for it. Everywhere on the planet, there's a word for the divine feminine.
What is
Goddess.
Goddess, yeah. And you know what? Goddess is a word I don't resonate with. So you don't resonate with feminine. I don't resonate with goddess.
With goddess because
To me, it feels like in the same way that feminine feels like a cultural thing. I feel like the word goddess has been co-opted in a way that just, I don't know. And I don't know if it's just because I'm a butch woman, I'm a tool chick. I don't know. The goddess thing doesn't resonate.
uh-huh. Oh, little Zoom glitch. Okay.
All good. We'll hang out.
Toot, toot, toot. Unglitch us. Oh, goddess of Zoom.
Oh, goddesses of Zoom.
Us. Oh, good. We're back. I asked the goddess of Zoom to unglitch us, and she did. All right. It worked out perfectly because I needed to go into the house just for a couple of things.
Good.
So here's a picture of me as the goddess Baba Yaga.
That's awesome. And this is the goddess. Tell me about this goddess. Tell me what?
Right. We would have a hard time calling that the divine feminine.
Would we?
It's not feminine by our cultural standards.
I don't know. There's some flowing robes.
Indeed, but that look. And then that picture is from Goddess on Earth. Do you know this book?
I don't know.
This is Lisa Lavart, and she went first to women in her community and said, "What goddess are you? I want to photograph you as that goddess." And she came to me with beautiful, ravishing photographs.
Gorgeous.
Yes, just incredible photographs. And said, "This is the goddess, that I am." And I said to her, what incredible work that you're doing. This young woman identifies as Venus.
Gorgeous. Are you in that book?
Yeah. Again, but yes, absolutely. Again, as Baba Yaga. Because not all love and roses, honey.
Yeah.
The goddess. It's
That's
serious.
great. Yeah.
And we went out in the woods, and so that she could photograph Baba Yaga, and that led her to Hecate.
Oh, that's amazing. That's wonderful.
So you talking about here, isn't it? This is this is the goddess. This is the woman in her power and in her rage.
Yeah.
This is Sheila Nagig.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what I say, divine feminine, which has so many cultural trappings on it. Mm-hmm. Find the goddess. Who is the goddess to you? Open it up. You know, hey, it was pretty obvious to me when I was younger that my goddess was Diana, right?
Yeah.
Out there with the moon and the plants and the wolves. That was a no-brainer for me.
Yeah.
And I was pretty surprised as I got, well past menopause to find that she seemed just a little, dare I say it, young to me. Traipsing around all night in the woods. What? Yes.
Totally.
And I said, I need another goddess archetype, right? And of course, the public sees me as Baba Yaga. That's fine. There I am in the book as Baba Yaga, and I showed you from yet another book, Baba Yaga. But Susan, that goddess art for you. It's not how you're seen. It's what's inside you. And I kind of knew what it was, but I was like, I don't know. Is this like really acceptable? I mean, she wears a headband. It does have spikes, and she has a book, and she's in a beautiful robe, and she's holding a torch. Mm-hmm. And so my postmenopausal goddess is the Statue of Liberty.
Oh, that's great.
Because once you open yourself up to the goddess Anna, you see her everywhere.
Yeah.
It's not just divine feminine you see. You start to see the goddess. And remember, goddess includes God, right?
Right. Right.
So
I
it really
guess.
is the wholeness. That's the wholeness that we want, isn't it? When we say divine feminine, we're not whole.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're acting like there's some part that's better than some other parts. But the goddess includes us all, including, I especially wanted to find this Mary for you. Can you see her?
Yeah.
So what
Uh-huh.
goddess you? She said, I'm the Blessed Virgin Mary. That's who I am.
That's awesome.
Right? Now
Right.
she's pretty butchy too there, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
But she can claim that Mary, and I don't know if you could see, but she's standing by a little red sign that says
This is
girls.
girls. Yeah, totally. Girls. Totally. Well, so you've inspired me to do some more research on goddesses,
All right.
and this has been a
Goddess of
very,
every woman, Lisa Lavart.
that's great. Thank you for sharing that. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. And a lot of great food for thought, and incendiary and sometimes, and controversial, which you never shy away from, ever, ever, ever. But
I did a long series for a midwife group about herbs for labor, and I included cannabis. And I
yeah.
said, just send all upset people to me. Where we got one hooray finally and one you witch.
Just one. That's amazing. So
we were kind of thrilled, yeah. So
that's
perhaps
great.
it won't be quite as bad as you imagine it will be.
Who knows?
I bet you'll be surprised at the support that you get.
Well, let's wait and see. And
Let's wait and see. And your continuing exploration of how to help women feel supported
yes,
in their manifestation of their magnificence.
absolutely.
Yeah.
How to help women understand their true intrinsic value just by being who they are, that they can
What
belong to themselves, they belong to the world, they belong to each other, they belong to us.
there's a movie sequence called Dysmorphic, D-Y-S,
Mhm.
M-O-R-P-H-A-C. Look for it on the internet if you want to know more about some things that actually, although they sounded incendiary, I was very soft spoken about them.
Okay.
It's much, much worse than what I said.
Okay. All right. I
They-
appreciate you. I
Yeah.
appreciate this conversation and our time together, and we'll do this again on another topic.
Green blessings, everybody. Bye-bye, Anna.
Bye-bye. Here's my record button.